So ever since Disney made the ultimate decision to delay Snow White until March of 2025, a whole year later than its original release date window, we know that Bob Iger is already dealing with a lot of things on his own plate, a lot of failures such as the Marvels. Even their movie called Wish is now looking to underperform at the box office, which, by the way, the Disney board of directors were viewing that film as their only saving grace for a theatrical release in 2023 to kind of give themselves a little bit of leeway into 2024. This is Mike Zero. Subscribe if you're new and like this video to see future updates. I'm also on Twitter at Mike01. I thank you also very much for the great and kind support. Now, one thing about Rachel Zegler that I think a lot of people are very much, aware about right now is the fact that at the end of the day, we know that she said some very dumb comments months ago that went viral, that was actually done a couple of years ago, actually. We know that at the same exact time, there's a lot of things happening between Bob Iger and his treatment of all these live-action remakes and doubling down on DEI and ESG with Hercules, The Black Cauldron, as well as Sword in the Stone, Lilo and Stitch, and a whole lot more that will be announced, by the way, by the first quarter of 2024 to kind of expand their film slate, while also making those movies smaller scale per the cost containment plan. And about that cost containment plan, by the way, it is wreaking havoc on a lot of movies and their budgeting limitations. But beyond all of this, let's focus on Rachel Zegler here and exactly what she has been blaming, or should I say who she's been blaming, about everything revolving around Disney and Snow White. Now, with Rachel Zegler currently dealing with tons of backlash and criticism still to this day based on her Snow White comments, one major development has to do with her view of the backlash and her reaction to it all. Director Mark Webb of Snow White delivered the following. Going into this film, one thing that Rachel reassured me was that we would be dealing with some level of a toxic fan base, specifically from men, with Snow White becoming a powerful leader that can fight for herself. As a director, I felt it was important to stay in touch with the cast and the crew, and especially with Zegler, since she is just getting into this business in Hollywood. One thing that we both agreed on is that toxic men are to blame for this ongoing backlash that can't seem to accept or deal with a powerful female lead in a role like that and reinvents Snow White. This is something that Greta Gerwig really wanted to push for, and even Greta prepared us for the incoming noise and the loud noise from a toxic male demographic base. When I was talking with Rachel, she would reassure me as well as a director that men that can't accept women for taking control in her own story is probably the biggest threat to an audience that is not ready for change. As a director, I felt Rachel was the right fit for the role for that specific reason. She knows what is wrong in this world and what needs to be fixed to become the new standard in the film industry, so that we can normalize this acceptance of female roles that can stand up for themselves and break away from the typical expectations. Now guys, let me just stop here quick about Mark Webb. Now Mark Webb, not a big surprise coming out of him. The only movies that he's really known for are Amazing Spider-Man's 1 and 2 and 500 Days of Summer, which, by the way, that one's probably the biggest movie that he has ever made, and that was about it. When you look at Snow White, you can see that he is latching onto this film like there's no tomorrow. And this is mostly due in part to the fact that he lost his Snow White multi-film deal. We talked about this. He was supposed to have a couple of other Snow White movies, one of which being a sequel, two others of which being prequel films focusing on the Evil Queen. Those were ultimately canceled by Disney. They were supposed to be announced by this month, right around the last earnings call, and that no longer actually was a thing because of all the backlash going against this film and all the drama surrounding Rachel Zegler. It just was not worth it to Disney anymore. But they are doubling down on a Lion King universe instead of a Snow White universe. We talked about this too. You're going to get a Scar spin-off, a Lion King sequel, kind of based off of the animated sequel, stuff like that. Now, what's interesting about this too is the fact that we have Mark Webb confirming that this is how Rachel Zegler sees the reason of the backlash becoming so significant, and it's putting all blame on toxic males, and this is not a surprise. We have had this from Leslie Headland of The Acolyte for Star Wars. We got this recently from director Nia DaCosta of The Marvels, when she was blaming toxic men for the underperformance of this film and the bad press that it's been receiving. It never stops, and it never will stop until you have a lot of investors and shareholders like BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street backing away from Disney and calling it quits. Do I ever see that happening? To be quite honest, no. I don't ever see that happening. Not in the foreseeable future, at least. You know, there's no way that they're going to let go of that overall strategy unless it really gets so bad to the point where Disney literally shuts down. Which, you know, honestly, at the same exact time, if they keep this up for the next couple of years, I don't know if there will even be a Disney by 2027, let alone 2026. If they really keep this up and they keep doubling down harder and harder on these movies like this, that's when you know things are going to go really wrong. Now, to top it all off, alright, he continues, I remember on set when working with Rachel that we both agreed that the male audience would only want a Snow White that was hopeless and defenseless, and we just could not do that anymore, and we actually had to deliver something new and unique for our core audience. Many are not going to accept that, and I think that is a living example of what needs to be fixed in this world. Let me just say this, that Rachel has a lot to say to the world about all the noise and the unnecessary loud minority making all the ruckus. Of Snow White, of course, it's about to go against the toxic nature and embracing women that can't stand for themselves. We feel this was the major flaw in many of the Disney classics that made the female roles to be hopeless and scared, and we thought it was time to flip the tables, to really deliver something new and unique to our audience as this time. We cannot wait to deliver this film to everyone around the globe, and Rachel is just ecstatic to get this thing rolling. Now again, Mark Webb really just latching onto Rachel, like, you know, they're teaming up, they are trying to overly promote this movie, they're trying to send a message, deliver this agenda, blah 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 blah, right? All this nonsense. And Greta Gerwig, by the way, is the real cause of all of this unnecessary garbage that's been spewing out of Snow White, because she is the one that wrote the story, she is the one that wrote the script. You know, yes, you know, we have Erin that worked by her side, but it was all mainly Greta Gerwig. Now, yes, at the same exact time, you got Mark Webb, the director, kind of, you know, directing the movie and coming up with the whole pacing of the film and how it should be shot, how it should be acted, stuff like that. But at the core, like I said before, Rachel Zegler supports all this nonsense. She is pushing for all of this, you know, this nonsense agenda that's being driven by Disney about focusing on really just delivering a message and an agenda to kind of create this quote-unquote new standard or normalize what should be accepted in the film industry. It really just comes across as very controlling and as if they want to change the world. That's what it really comes across as, and that's basically what it is. So anyway, guys, you know, drop a comment below. Fill me in below in the comments what you all have to say about this, and if you guys did enjoy the content for today, make sure to drop a thumbs up on this video to support the channel, and I will catch you guys later.